show that in the video. aagenieksen.dk, which is a great site where a lot of great Hnefatafl games and variants are played. Embarked on a quest to try and lessen the drawishness of this game. And they came up with a few modifications to the rule set that work to this end. For example, central draw forts, like the one I just showed you, are forbidden. If the defender constructs a fort like that and begins to repeat moves back and forth, 2-move draw fort right there, several times, that will be declared a loss. That's basically a disqualified configuration at this point. So can't do that anymore. But there are other draw forts you can construct that would also allow this kind of thing, but are not technically forbidden by that rule. And one interesting configuration that would be a draw fort in Hnefatafl is this edge configuration here. Let me bring that in a little closer for you. So you see at the edge of the board you have 2 pawns on the exterior of the board, the exterior file of the board, the king with 2 spaces to move in between those 2 pawns, and another 2 pawns creating a vertical blockade over the edge of the board. Again, let's try and get that visible there if possible. All right. So that's very interesting, and it's really just a draw fort. But in Copenhagen Hnefatafl, this is actually declared a victory. And in some ways, it kind of restores, to some extent, the original edge escape rule that we presume was actually played on the 11 by 11 board. So with that in mind, as I said, it seems to have, if you look at the playability statistics for the game, it seems to have reduced the number of draws considerably. And partly that's just because one draw configuration has been forbidden, and one draw configuration has been declared a victory for white. Additionally, there is another modification of the rule set that is designed to prevent things like this from happening, where long trains of pawns create structures that can never be captured on the edge of the board. And the modification here is the shield wall rule, which, as far as I know, does not have too much of a historical precedent, although I may be wrong about that. But the idea is if you were to surround that formation by a sequence of pawns and then make some lateral move towards the edge of the board, like so, or horizontal move, which is how you just have to close off one of the edges while you are building a structure, or while you have completed the structure. At that point, the surrounded pawns are captured and a space is cleared. And you can do this in sort of the middle of a file like that. You can also do it at the edge. So suppose you have a configuration like this, and you would really like to get your king in that corner, but it's closed off. One thing you can do is begin to construct a shield wall around one of the armatures there, close off the shield wall and use the fortress there as one of your other pieces, which is something you can do in Hnefatafl. It can act as a piece for either color, and capture everything that was blockading that square, blockading that region, allowing ultimately the king to enter if he needs to, and then eventually escape. It seems that these rule modifications have been very useful in reducing the draw options of the game and also increasing the complexity of the end game. Where before the goal was obviously to get the king out to one of the corners, this creates a kind of issue for gameplay in that a lot of the end games can be fairly straightforward. Black will have an easy time anticipating what white wants to do if only one of the corners is open. So adding rules like the shield wall and edge escape, or not edge escape, and escape forts or exit forts to the mix allows us to create alternative regions of pressure. So if the king cannot escape at the edge here, and for whatever reason, if it's being fairly well defended, then maybe he can start trying to build a structure that he can escape to here, which will force black to redistribute his forces to address this fort. And in doing that redistribution, it's possible that black will then be forced to open up other channels where the king can also go to create pressure to try and escape as well. So long story short, these modifications have not only made for a less drawish game, but have also increased the overall complexity of the gameplay and have led to some truly epic battles for the corner or for board edge position.